It is now my pleasure to introduce to you one of our two nonfiction mentors for this year, Jack Elhai. A native of Los Angeles, Jack earned a BA in English from Carleton College and an MFA in creative writing from Bennington College. He is past president of the American Society of Journalists and Authors, and his awards and honors include the June Roth Memorial Award for Medical Journalism, a Loft McKnight Fellowship in Creative Prose, and research grants from the Jerome Foundation and the Center for Arts Criticism. His books include The Lobotomist, which received the Minnesota Book Award and the annual Book Award of the Medical Journalists Association of the UK. The book was recently adapted as a TV pilot by HBO and was the basis of a 2008 PBS American Experience episode. Two new books are forthcoming this year, Turbulent Air, A History of Northwest Airlines, and The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, which explores the complex relationship between the American psychiatrist Douglas Kelly and his 22 Nazi patients awaiting trial as war criminals in Nuremberg. Jack is no stranger to the mentoring programs here at the Loft. In 1989, he was selected for what was then called our Creative Nonfiction Residency by mentor Vivian Gornick, and as a fiction writer was one of the 8 winners in that year's mentor series in fiction and poetry, with mentors Andre Kudrasky, Lynn Sharon Schwartz, Grace Paley, and oddly enough, 2 of my mentors from Arizona State, Alberto Rios and Rita Dove. So to the members of this year's group, if you doubted me when I told you at orientation that once you are in this program, we hold on to you, here is your proof. Please welcome Jack Elhai.
Thank you, Jared. There's more than that, even, because the Loft has been with me pretty much through my entire writing career, starting from a time when, as a very young and inexperienced writer, I wanted to learn more about screenwriting through several great classes I took in fiction writing during the 1980s, and other workshops in nonfiction writing that I took in the 90s after I was in the Mentor series as a participant. And then I've learned a great deal from teaching at the Loft as well during the past 10 years or so on a variety of topics. So there have been very few constants, I would say, in my writing career, but the Loft is one of those few constants. And I'm grateful for that, and being up here impresses that upon me. And it means a lot to me as well. I'm going to read 2 pieces here. The first is an essay called Instant Life. These latest pets in our household, which followed such predecessors as tadpoles, crickets, goldfish, cocooning butterflies, and ant farm ants, are all now deceased. They came in a box sealed in plastic that I brought home from the shelf of a discount department store. My daughter, Natalie, just 8 years old, awaited me at the door when I returned home. The directions inside the box unfolded in small print on a narrow sheet of paper. Together we unpacked the kit, snapped green plastic plants and rocks onto the floor of the miniature aquarium, filled a measuring cup with tap water, and purified the water with blue tablets. The water went into the aquarium. Natalie, her face serious and her mouth working with concentration, moved with the calm and precision of someone absolutely confident in the authority of published instructions. Soon came the crucial moment, the time akin to Baron von Frankenstein's flipping of the huge electric switch. We would bring to life dozens of tiny swimming creatures called sea monkeys, actually a variety of brine shrimp. I cut the corner off a small packet and we tried to get a look inside it. Only darkness, a mysterious nothing there. So Natalie upended the packet, and a minute quantity of granules, like a spray of sea foam, hit the water and slowly circled. Her fingers gripped hard as she stirred with a plastic spoon. The spiraling powder held the promise of more spontaneous motion to come. According to the words on the box, my daughter and I had created instant life. The passage of a few days would bring the appearance of sea monkeys in the aquarium. The packaging foretold times when the sea monkeys would grow, frolic, form a community, and raise families. As I gathered up the box and torn packets for the trash, Natalie kept her eyes on the tank. Microscopic wonders were undoubtedly already taking place inside. She looked back and forth as she moved her face close to the plastic wall, trying to see the mysteries in the water. When nothing visible happened, she reluctantly drifted away to play elsewhere. I understood her longing. I, too, had tried to grow sea monkeys when I was a child. Day after day, I peered into their little bowl, hoping to see the granules sprout fins, tails, and fishy faces. I wanted to create life, to make inert matter pulse, as I had seen mad scientists accomplish in a dozen movies, always with complications. But my particles remained mere sediment, coating the bottom of the aquarium like dust in a crypt. In a couple of weeks, when the water ominously clouded, then began smelling like cabbage, my mother demanded that I dispose of it. I pleaded to allow the sea monkeys a little more time. The next day, I returned home from school to find the whole kit gone: aquarium, food packets, magnifying glass. I didn't have to ask her what happened to my pets. I knew. She flushed the sea monkeys down the toilet. In those years, the late 1960s, sea monkeys had reached a pinnacle of popularity. A kid could not open a Justice League of America or Archie comic book without seeing full-page ads showing the happy, human-looking animals in gliding water flight. The mail-order coupon bore the address of a New Jersey post office box. It belonged to Harold von Braunhut, the inventor of amazing live sea monkeys. Brine shrimp had made him rich. Harold Nathan Braunhut, he added the von during adulthood, was born in Memphis in 1926 and moved with his family to New York City when he was 5. There, the Braunhuts worked in the printing and toy businesses. After taking classes at the City College of New York and Columbia University, he raced motorcycles and worked as a talent agent for entertainers, including a high diver who plunged from a 40-foot high tower into pools filled with 1 foot of water. Eventually, though, Harold found a different calling. He never appeared in any of the comic book ads I saw, but old photos of von Braunhut show a man with thinning hair and a penchant for black jackets and floral patterned shirts. By the end of his career as a mail-order king, he held 195 patents for weird amusements designed to appeal to boys just like me. Crazy crabs, actually small hermit crabs, marketed like sea monkeys as pets. Invisible goldfish, guaranteed to thrive on invisible food and to never appear. Amazing hair-raising monsters, chemical lumps that grew tresses of mineral strands, a mad scientist monster lab, and X-ray specs, toy glasses still widely sold that used lenses of dyed red guinea hen feathers to give the viewer double vision and the illusion of seeing legs through clothing and bones through limbs. Sea monkeys, though, were von Braunhut's first big success. In 1957, he learned about the strange properties of a brine shrimp species named Artemia salina. They live in salt lakes and wet areas that frequently dry up and have evolved the ability to use cryptobiosis, a dormant state sparked by desiccation, to survive. The return of water brings them back to life. Recalling the successes of invisible flea circuses of an earlier time, von Braunhut speculated that a barely perceptible creature, available by the billions and easy to breed, might be lucratively marketed as pets. The brine shrimp even moved in response to light, making it possible to tout them as trainable. Von Braunhut's first efforts to market these creatures to toy retailers failed. Lacking much money, he appealed directly to potential customers through the low-cost medium of comic book advertising. Starting in 1962, readers of Batman, the Fantastic Four, Scrooge McDuck, and dozens of other comic book titles took in von Braunhut's claims that sea monkeys could obey commands, smile, play hide-and-seek, swim in formation, enjoy picnics, and joyously bear live young. Pocket change seemed a small price to pay for such astonishing pets. Many came with an insurance policy that guaranteed the animal's longevity. My sea monkeys, unfortunately, were uninsured. Kids bought sea monkey packets and kits by the hundreds of thousands, although some, like me, must have felt disappointed when their long-anticipated pets failed to thrive and settled mere muck to the bottom of the tanks. Even as he devised a full line of sea monkeys accessories, which included mini tanks, a racing speedway, water and creature-filled necklace pendants and watches, faux sea monkeys, medicines, and aphrodisiacs, von Braunhut worked to improve the size, lifespan, and attractiveness of his little moneymakers. He eventually replaced the original brine shrimp species with the hardier Artemia neos, named after their breeding grounds at the New York Ocean Science Laboratories, NYOS, increasing the satisfaction and wonder of his young customers. Natalie often came to gaze at the aquarium. It sat on its windowsill, as lovely as a gemstone, reflecting slivers of light on her face, and as lifeless. It pained me to see her looking, because I feared that nothing would happen, and I would become the parent who had to flush the container full of expectancy down the toilet. The meanest of dogs gives something to a child by his presence, a growl or a snap that says, "Yeah, I'm here." Even a snail snatched from the garden never lets a child doubt its existence. But sea monkeys may never materialize, leaving kids with nothing but ache. After about a week, Natalie pulled me to the windowsill. I drew my face close and tried to penetrate the transparency of the water. At first I saw nothing except fine floating silt, the equivalent of dust drifting in the air. But I made out one speck different from the rest, distinguished by its transparency and a lazy, undulating tail. Then I saw a few more swimming particles, and it dawned on me that the tank swarmed with them. These were the only pets I knew that required reading glasses to appreciate them. Once I could see them, I recognized that this small tank, which nobody had moved or jostled for days, circulated with currents that carried the infant sea monkeys like eagles riding plumes of air. They looked weak and hungry. We had created instant life, but now we had to sustain it. From a drawer beneath the kitchen sink, a corner of which Natalie had appropriated for sea monkey supplies, she produced another paper packet. I snipped its corner, and she inserted a plastic spoon with a head the size of a peppercorn. When she withdrew it, a small mound of green fluff filled the head. This was their food, some sort of desiccated algae, and it spread over the surface of the tank water like an oil slick. Then, as we watched, particles of green began falling to the bottom, a shower of sea monkeys' manna. For the next 2 months, Natalie was all business. She fed the sea monkeys weekly on Thursday, her choice of the day, and I had no idea why she picked it so definitively, skimmed gunk off the top of the water, and inspected the tank daily. Her efforts paid off in the rapid growth of her pets, which became the size of swimming mosquito larvae. She also took responsibility for the mental health of her pets by moving the tank to different parts of the house to prevent them, she explained, from growing bored. Sea monkeys were not wired for ennui, however, judging from the rate at which they reproduced. A part of their mating ritual was to lock together for hours at a time, one pulling the other along like a tethered appendage. And I initially thought they were practicing cannibalism, something I would find much easier to describe to Natalie than the intensity of their copulation. She saved me the trouble by interrupting my explanation and shouting, they're mating," with the pride of a mom whose kid just got asked to the prom. We sometimes saw corpses on the bottom of the tank, but new babies replaced them in greater numbers. How many sea monkeys were too many? They seemed to know because at a certain point the population explosion ended and the numbers plateaued. Natalie took pride in all things like this, that the sea monkeys instinctively did well. She believed, in fact, that she had created her pets, that she had given them life. It was a childish notion, I thought. She had only combined things set before her, von Braunhut's powder and purified water, and she had wielded no special powers of creation. But my own notions of creation were wrong. In the introduction to her novel, Frankenstein, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley wrote that simply assembling ingredients in the right proportions is exactly what's necessary for the creation of anything of importance. Shelley observed, invention, it must be humbly admitted, does not consist in creating out of void, but out of chaos. The materials must, in the first place, be afforded. It can give form to dark, shapeless substances, but cannot bring into being the substance itself. Shelley cast the creator as an accumulator who works with materials or ideas at hand to make something new. Shelley's own character, the doctor who produced life by adding electricity to cobbled pieces of the dead, suffered from the consequences of his inventive skill. In Victor Frankenstein, Shelley daydreamed, I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. Frightful must it be, for supremely frightful would be the effect of any human endeavor to mock the stupendous mechanism of the creator of the world. His success would terrify the artist. He would rush away from his odious handiwork, horror-stricken. Finding success in building life from scattered ingredients would unhinge anyone, even the clever and conniving inventor of my daughter's pets. Years after establishing Trans Science, the business he ran to market sea monkeys and develop new products for kids, von Braunhut abandoned convention and changed the course of his life. He divorced his first wife and wed Yolanda Signorelli, an actress in such pornographic films as Venus in Furs and Death of a Nymphette. He married her on Valentine's Day, 1980, in a group wedding ceremony at the Playboy Club in Manhattan. The previous year, he had been arrested at New York's JFK Airport for criminal possession of a weapon, which turned out to be an invention of his called the spring whip. Von Braunhut successfully argued in court that the spring-operated device intended for self-defense was not a bludgeon, and the charges against him were dropped. Later, he offered to donate proceeds from the sale of the spring whip, now called the Kyoga Agent M5, to the defense of Aryan Nation's leader Richard Butler, then on trial for sedition. Soon newspapers around the country were reporting that the inventor of sea monkeys admired Adolf Hitler, attended rallies of white supremacist organizations, and promoted anti-Semitism. After an investigation, the Anti-Defamation League outed von Braunhut as Jewish as well. His racial beliefs led toy distributors to drop his products. If racial hatred is a disease, as some psychologists believe, von Braunhut may have caught it years before bringing sea monkeys to life. He might have long suffered from an inferiority complex, as the addition of von to his name suggests. I like to consider yet another explanation for von Braunhut's erratic behavior late in life. His success with sea monkeys, which allowed him to think he had created life, made him feel godlike and infallible, or even worse, placed him in Shelley's horrifying category of challenger to God. In all of my childhood and teen years, spent closely watching horror movies like Frankenstein, in which hubris leads scientists into forbidden research, I saw one lesson repeated like a mantra. Some things man is not meant to know, it went. Had von Braunhut drawn this moral from his own career? Did he think he had gone too far? If so, such a man, responsible for the reanimation of countless millions of creatures and possessing a fortune for making it easy for children to create instant life, may well have suffered from the kind of self-hate that would turn him into a Jewish Nazi. Before the white supremacist scandal, von Braunhut had moved from New York City to Bryan's Road, Maryland, where he bought a 70-acre estate along the Potomac River. That is where he died in 2003 at the age of 77, apparently from a fall. After several months, I noticed a change in Natalie's attitude toward the sea monkeys. Her eyes no longer scanned the tank looking for her favorites. Instead, she took in the animals with a single glance as if she were facing some ordinary object. She stopped talking to them. Sometimes she asked me to feed them on Thursday, and she didn't care whether I gave them too little food or too much. Finally, she started talking about getting another pet, a bird maybe, or a snake. I explained that we would add no other pet to the household while we still had sea monkeys. She still had responsibility toward the denizens of our little aquarium, and pets were not disposable. Natalie seemed to understand my argument. I could see in her face, in the set lines of her eyes and mouth, that she wished the sea monkeys dead. I could understand a child growing bored with a pet, especially a pet whose charms had been so outrageously oversold. But I couldn't imagine my gentle girl wishing death on any creature, no matter how convenient its absence might prove. I reminded her that she had brought the sea monkeys to life, had birthed them in a sense. I got a shrug in return. When I accused her of wishing her pets dead, she denied it, even as I watched her satisfaction mount when the number of sea monkeys in the tank fell from dozens to 5 or 6. Some brine shrimp disease may have been stalking them, or perhaps their water had grown stale. I was convinced, however, that they were succumbing to simple neglect, the loss of Natalie's interest. 3 more months passed. I continued to feed the sea monkeys. By now, Natalie had dropped all pretense of caring. But I sometimes saw them chasing and trying to devour one another. One day I returned home to find, for the first time in ages, Natalie smiling at the tank. "Only one is left," she announced. He was large for a sea monkey, a half-inch long strand of filament, and he circled the tank like a champion. After all this time, instant life had been reduced to a single representative. This sea monkey hung on for a long time, through Thanksgiving, the New Year, and Valentine's Day. Every time I was convinced he was gone, he reappeared from behind a plastic rock, and the sunlight caught his shimmering body. With patience, Natalie waited him out, until at last he appeared no more. Nobody mourned him. To me fell the duty of flushing the lifeless water down the toilet. Now we have 2 cats. I wonder what Harold von Braunhut would have thought of the emotions his sea monkeys produced in our home. Adoration, apathy, active hate. We carry an arsenal of emotional intensity in our hearts, which expresses so unpredictably, as the inventor of these pets would surely have known by the end of his life. And then there's one short second thing that I would like to read to you tonight, which is from, which is the opening section of the one of the books that Jared mentioned, The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, the one about the U.S. Army psychiatrist who worked with the Nazi war criminals at Nuremberg. And you'll notice that in the title, Nazi is singular, not plural, and that's because Kelly developed an especially close relationship with one of the war criminal defendants, and that was Hermann Goering, who is the highest ranking of the Nazis on trial. So the book follows the intersection of these 2 men at Nuremberg, and then what happened when they broke apart after Kelly left Nuremberg in early 1946, and follows each of them to their to the ends of their lives. This is chapter 1 from The Nazi and the Psychiatrist. It's a very short chapter titled The House. The Kellys lived in a sprawling Mediterranean-style house on Highgate Road in the hills of Kensington, north of Berkeley, California. Its red-tiled roof rose high above the distant drifting waters of the bay, but closer, beyond the yard's 4 terraces and stone walks, and down a slope of redwood and fruit trees, stood the headstones of Sunset View Cemetery. A little merry-go-round and a children's swimming pool sat in the center courtyard of the Kellys' U-shaped house. The front door of the home opened onto a hallway with the kitchen to the left, where the doctor made the family's meals using a large oven, a fast food griddle, and a meat grinder. The kitchen connected to a pantry with a freezer. The oldest son once sat atop the humming freezer and contemplated killing his father with an axe. The entry hallway led to a bathroom to the right, the site of a gruesome scene that played out on the first day of 1958. And beyond that to the living room, which contained a fireplace, a long sofa, and the green leather chair that was the doctor's own. The room was carpeted with the furniture pulled back to the walls to open space for guests. Sometimes in the living room, Dr. Kelly would play a game with his oldest son. The boy had to leave the room, and in his absence, the doctor would move a pencil on the coffee table. When the boy returned, he had to figure out what in the room had changed. The son was being graded and trained, and he never knew when he would feel his father's temper explode. Then beyond the living room was Dr. Kelly and Dookie's bedroom, overlooking the rear of the half-acre lot. In a small closet that the children sneaked into through a hallway, they could overhear their parents' fights. From the living room, black-stained stairs rose to the second level. Up there, a bullet hole hidden beneath a rug scarred the wooden floor of a hallway drenched with sunlight from tall windows. Before terminating at Dr. Kelly's study, the hallway ran past the closet, concealing the tricks and props of his magic shows. The view from the study window presented a glorious panorama of Golden Gate Bay and the prison tower of Alcatraz Island. When Dr. Kelly turned his desk chair to face that view, he may have settled his gaze on Alcatraz and remembered his months working in another prison in Nuremberg, Germany. His desk was orderly. In cabinets and a long, narrow laboratory, he kept bone saws, a lab table, mortars, alcohol burners, graduated cylinders and beakers, collections of crystals, botanical samples mounted on glass slides, 2 human skulls, and a large assortment of chemicals, many of them toxic. The children slept in the basement bedrooms. They anguished in the unpredictability of Dr. Kelly's goodnight visits. When they heard the creak of his weight on the stairs, they had a few seconds to brace themselves for whatever mood he brought. The kitchen is where the last argument began. Often when Dr. Kelly and Dookie fought, Dookie would pack her purse and leave for the day. This time, Dr. Kelly burst out of the kitchen, howling, and stormed up the stairs to his study. He slammed the door and toppled a porcelain doorstop, its fragments raining down the steps. After a couple of minutes, he emerged, concealing something in his hand. He came down the stairs and stopped on the landing, which commanded the living room like a stage. He shouted a statement that terrified and bewildered his wife, father, and children. Then he put the chemical in his mouth. Dookie caught him at the foot of the stairs and cradled his head, but Dr. Kelly's act was final. Thank you.